Good evening, everybody. Tonight I will be delivering a speech informing you guys about the Indian removals during the tragic event in American history called the Trail of Tears. At the beginning of the 1830s, there were approximately 125,000 Native Americans living in the southeast states of America. But at the end of the decade, there were very few of them left. President Andrew Jackson was running for president in 1828, and he was against the Indians living in the southeast because whites wanted to grow cotton on the Indians' land, so the federal government made the Indians move westward across the Mississippi River thousands of miles, and this difficult journey is called the Trail of Tears. President Andrew Jackson wanted an Indian Removal Act, and Congress gave him what he wanted, and it's called the Indian Removal Act of 1830. The Indians were removed one by one, and I will be talking to you about three types of removal: the first, second, and third. The first removal dealt with the Choctaws and the Chickasaws. The second dealt with the Creeks and Cherokees. The third dealt with the Seminoles. And then I will talk about some that have stayed behind or wasn't captured. The first is the Chaco, and they were the one most allied with the United States, and they gave up tribal rights to land east of the Mississippi, but anybody could still live there because it still wasn't a law, but they still had to live under the state law. But they would be paid for property left behind if they were to move. But the government provided shelter and food for them if they did move for a full year, and that ended in chaos, and they eventually had to immigrate west. Their routes shown here: Choctaws ended from central Mississippi and went to Tennessee to Memphis, and then crossed into Arkansas to Little Rock. And they also had another pathway from left central Mississippi through Arkansas to Little Rock. The next tribe I want to talk about is the Chickasaw, and they were kinsmen of the Choctaws, and they began in a better and easier position than the Choctaws did. They started trekking west in 1837, and during their trek they all got smallpox, and it spread to the Choctaws, which are their kinsmen. And then a drought hit them in the late 1838, and it devastated roughly 6,000 people who completed the journey. And then their route is the same as the Choctaw northern route through Tennessee and Arkansas and that place. The second removal is the Creeks and the Cherokees. The Creeks were removed by force, and the federal government said, well, the immigration to the west would be your best solution, and the Creeks denied that. But then negotiators said that they had a generous concession and came up with the Treaty of Washington, which said the eastern Alabama, 5 million acres of that, the 2 out of it, would be for those who stayed behind. But like the others, that went into chaos, and they eventually had to move as well. And there, while they surveying to move, a bunch of whites came and speculated a little and tried to sell the Indians lands and rights and force them to move. Their tracks, Lewis Cass, who was a vocal advocate of the Removal Act, took the men and shackled and handcuffed them on a boat and went up Mobile Bay and the Mississippi River to Arkansas River, where they met the women and children of the Creeks, who then journeyed on Arkansas River to the Little Rock, and it was a rough trail after that. The next one I'd like to talk about is the Cherokees. The Cherokees had to deal with a lot of ordeals, and they resisted removal and wanted Americans to sway their opinion to get them to not remove. And they came up with a treaty which said they had 2 years to move away from their territory, and very few of them did move after 2 years. And their routes, they had the water routes, which is shown on this one, and they went from the Tennessee River, the Ohio River, Mississippi, and Arkansas River. in their Trail of Tears. The next one I'd like to talk about is the Seminoles. And the Seminoles were the fiercest physical resistance, and they failed like less white people to come and take over their land because they live in South Florida in the Everglades. And they fought in a battle that was one of the longest U.S. battles in history, and they lost, and the government thought that it wasn't worth the effort to try and continue fighting, and they ended up surrendering, and the captured ones had to make their own Trail of Tears and move west, and the ones who were saved got to stay in the Everglades. And there are still some descendants today in the Everglades, and like in the Everglades today, there are some Cherokees that live in the North Carolina mountains who eluded capture. And it's been about 170 years since the Removal Act was signed and passed, and to commemorate this American history chapter, they have built a National Historical Trail for the Cherokees called the Trail of Tears National Historical Trail, where every year thousands of bikers ride the trail in honor of those who experienced tragedy.